So Scythe's original Fuma is one of my favorite CPU coolers, but they're back with an upgrade, the Fuma 2. Howdy guys, Ponchato here, and today we're going to be checking out the Fuma 2 and comparing it with the Fuma Revision B. Side note, the Revision B is basically the same as the original Fuma. It was pretty much just the adaptation to AM4. Otherwise, they're basically identical. Anyway, let's get to it. The Fuma 2 is a dual fan, dual tower cooler released in May of 2019. It's compatible with the usual AM4, LGA 1151, and LGA 2066. The dimensions are where it starts to differ from the original Fuma. The Fuma 2 is 155 millimeters tall compared to the original Fuma, which was 149. It's also only 137 millimeters wide, so it stays completely clear of the first PCIe slot. RAM clearance, on the other hand, is totally revamped. The original Fuma's fan hung over the front RAM slot, so while you could move the fan up, you were limited by case clearance. The Fuma 2 is offset to the back and has a slim fan up front, so front RAM clearance is completely unlimited. In the same vein, rear RAM clearance is changed too. The original Fuma was relatively limited to only 40 millimeters in height. With the Fuma 2, it is basically unlimited and has 61 millimeters of clearance. Another interesting change is the front fan spins counterclockwise. Scythe says this leads to higher static pressure and airflow and gives it a 15% increase in cooling efficiency over the original Fuma. But we'll see when we get to the benchmarks how true that claim actually is. Based on the data I collected, I estimate it can handle about the same TDP as the original Fuma, around 200 watts. At $60, the Fuma 2 is in the mid-range category. It's about $13 more than the original. Looking inside the box, first we have all the hardware, long screwdriver for mounting, thermal paste, the mounting screws, and Intel backplate, then PWM Y-splitters, and the instructions. On the other side, the slim 15mm thick 120mm fan that spins counterclockwise. And finally in the middle, the Fuma 2 itself, and you can see its heavily offset design and huge clearance for RAM in the back. The heatsink has 6 heat pipes, uses a nickel-plated solid copper base plate, and the heavy offset to the rear leaves the front open for unlimited RAM clearance. The top plate is also different from the original. On the original, it just had the normal silver fin on top, but the Fuma 2 has a satin black plate with Scythe logo. It looks nicer and will blend in a bit better with most system setups today. Looking at the fans, up front is a 15mm thick Kaze Flex fan, and in the center, a standard 25mm Kaze Flex. Both of them run from 300 to 1200 RPM, have a fluid dynamic bearing, and soft rubber corner pads for vibration damping. The original Fuma fans ran up to 1400 RPM, did not have corner pads, and used a sleeve bearing instead, so the Fuma 2's fans are a pretty big upgrade. It also includes a third set of fan clips for a triple fan setup, but the rear fan would hang past the edge of a mini ITX motherboard, so that's only allowed on larger cases like micro ATX and regular ATX. Now Scythe has a really good mounting setup, and the Fuma 2 uses their 3rd generation hyper precision mounting system, which just basically means it's very easy to put together. It starts with putting 4 plastic spacers on the backplate mounting holes. Mounting arms go on the spacers, get screwed down into the backplate, and side note, the included screwdriver is magnetized, so you don't need to worry about dropping any screws here. Anyway, after the arms are installed, you add a pea-sized dab of thermal paste in the center of the CPU and position the heatsink on top. Line up the screws in the crossbar with the threaded holes in the mounting arms and tighten down. Make sure you always alternate tightening down so you don't bend anything or torque the motherboard. And you can actually install the fans first, since there are cutouts in the heatsink to reach the crossbar mounting screws from the top. Next, the fan clips go onto the fans, which then easily clip onto the heatsink. The front fan has labeled mounting clips since it's slimmer than a standard 25mm fan. With the fans in place, you just plug both of them into the PWM Y-splitter and plug that into the CPU fan header on your motherboard. And that's it. It's a very easy installation process, and I have always liked how Scythe does it. But now let's go to the benchmarks with my Ryzen 3 1200 system featuring Team Group Vulkan Z memory, a passively cooled GT 1030, and Seasonic Focus Plus 850 watt power supply. We'll start with the idle temps. The Fuma 2 idled at 8.2 degrees Celsius, while the original Fuma was at 4.5. We can chalk that up to the difference in the RPM. The Fuma 2's fans can spin down to 200 RPM, whereas the original Fuma's minimum speed was 300 RPM. And now the idle noise levels. The difference is subtle, since 300 RPM of the original is still extremely quiet, but at 200 RPM, the Fuma 2 is essentially inaudible, even in a very quiet room. You won't have to worry about idle noise with the Fuma 2. Now here are the load temperatures, with the coolers running at their maximum RPM. Both the original Fuma and the Fuma 2 hit nearly the same temperature of just over 34 degrees Celsius. They both have strong cooling and are toward the upper end of coolers I've tested, but at first, that doesn't sound like the Fuma Fuma 2 is that much of an upgrade. That is, until you see the difference in load noise level. At full speed, the original Fuma hit a pretty loud 50 decibels. The Fuma 2 was one of the quietest coolers I've tested at under 43. So both coolers have the same cooling capacity, but the Fuma 2 does it while being more than 7 decibels quieter. That's a significant improvement in noise level over the original. And finally, load temperature normalized to 40 decibels. Here's where the Fuma 2 really shines. The original Fuma was already pretty good at about 36 degrees, but the Fuma 2 drops almost another degree and a half to 34.5, making it the third best CPU cooler I've tested, while being significantly smaller than the Ninja 5 and half the price of CryoRig's A40 Ultimate, a 240mm liquid cooler. So, is the Fuma 2 a worthy upgrade of the original Fuma? If you have a Fuma Revision B or the original Fuma, should you upgrade to the Fuma 2? And if you're just buying a new cooler, is the Fuma 2 worth it? First question, worthy upgrade? Absolutely. Scythe fixed all the issues I had with the original Fuma. First, RAM clearance. Fitting entirely behind the RAM slots is such a huge benefit, it can't be overlooked. On systems with rear RAM slots, same story. Huge benefit to have practically unlimited clearance. In fact, I'm not aware of any RAM that's over 61mm tall, but correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Second, minor thing, but the original Fuma's mounting crossbar wasn't attached to the heatsink, it just kinda sat on top. With the Fuma 2, it's bolted down, so it's much easier to install and you don't have to deal with trying to line it up and hold it in place. Second question, if you have the original Fuma, should you upgrade to the Fuma 2? Well, I'd say only if you have or are upgrading to RGB memory and want to have it completely uncovered. The Fuma 2 is definitely an upgrade of performance. It is empirically a better cooler than the original Fuma, but only by a few degrees, so you'll have to weigh the other benefits versus the cost and the hassle of installing a new cooler. The final question, if you're just getting a new cooler, is the Fuma 2 worth 60 bucks? Absolutely. I've been using the Fuma Revision B in my main computer for almost a year now, and I'll probably be switching to the Fuma 2. It's silent at idle, that's a huge benefit. It has unlimited RAM clearance, also very nice to have. And on top of all of that, probably the most important thing, it's just a really good cooler. It's pretty much only beat out by much more expensive coolers, and at that, really only liquid coolers, which will never be able to match the idle noise levels of an air cooler like the Fuma 2 because they have pumps. There's just no way around that. And for me, idle noise level is extremely important since I'm not usually wearing headphones at my computer. Plus, I just think it's tight when you turn on your computer and have to check for lights or some other indication that it's actually running because you literally can't hear it. I love that. I think that's so cool. So if you're looking for an upgrade or building a new computer and want to get a very nice air cooler for your system, click the link in the description to pick up a Fuma 2 for yourself. Hit subscribe and click the bell icon to get notified of new videos as soon as they're up. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more stuff like CPU cooler reviews, hit subscribe. And I want to hear from you. Have any of you ever actually hooked up a third fan on coolers like this? I'm really curious about that. I should try it. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, I hope I helped, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey, that actually worked. And neither of these things fell. That's so great, yay. Blah. Oh my God. I can't get it out. I can't say it. You've served me well.